right with
It's just going to take some time. Can we bend that stand there for you?
Great. It's good to be back here. Good to see you. Good to see all of you out there too. The nature of healing. That word has been bandied around already this morning quite a bit. You know, in the early New Thought movement had a lot of spiritual and mental healers. Sometimes they called themselves faith healers or mental healers or spiritual healers. I mean, think of Phineas Quimby, the founder of New Thought, right? Mary Baker Eddy, Emma Curtis Hopkins. Oh, somebody called the Ricks sisters, you know them? The Fillmores, Ernest Holmes. So, lots of history here in the New Thought movement around healing. And we talk about healing a lot here. I mean, ministers, prayer chaplains, practitioners, congregants, visitors. It seems that one of the most appealing tenets of this spiritual philosophy that we teach is that we are co-creators of our lives. And we have the power through our oneness with the ultimate creator to change the conditions of our lives. And that includes the physical conditions, our body temple as well as the body of our affairs. In fact, in the early years of New Thought, they placed so much emphasis on the power of healing through prayer and belief that the idea of accepting illness or bodily impairment was frowned on. It's not the thing to do, right? My earliest teacher and my mentor and now my dear friend, Reverend Margaret Stortz, who's been in New Thought and religious science for 88 gazillion years, she's 86 now, she told me about how, what she called way back in the day, those, what she called them, fundamental religious scientists, right? They would shame and flame people, all right, who are chronically ill or who had some serious medical issues and physical challenges. I don't know if you've ever encountered that attitude, but I got wisps of it when I first joined religious science way back when. Reverend Margaret told me that back in the day, people who were sick or not feeling well wouldn't go to church, not to protect others from their germs, but to protect themselves from the judgmental looks of ministers and practitioners. So the attitude seemed to be that if you were physically challenged in some way that wasn't healing cleanly, clearly, quickly, then something was wrong with your consciousness. Something was wrong. Because if you believed, you would be healed. Simple as that. Game, set, match. Yes, no, black, white. And that's how Christian Science tends to work. No medical intervention or assistance in any way, shape, or form. Well, in my humble opinion, luckily, and through growing wisdom, the extreme positions on the nature of that belief around healing didn't really carry through to all of New Thought. And over time, it has, in fact, softened and become more thoughtful. And I think this is a good thing. And why? Because healing means different things to different people. As divine beings having a human experience, our human nature is complex, confusing, contradictory, and often confounding, especially to those who are living in the midst of it, right? What may seem, for example, normal to me, such as needing reading glasses and having 38 pairs of them stashed everywhere, right? Might seem to someone else to be the abject surrender to the illusions of this world. Why don't I heal my eyes so that I can see clearly? Why did I get cataract surgery instead of praying them away? Oh, when I wrote that question as I was preparing this talk, it reminded me of a real story that I read some time back about anthropologists who were studying a extremely remote indigenous tribe in South America. Now, these people had apparently well documented a history of being able to communicate through mental telepathy with their various scattered settlements through intense ritual, trance, sacred herbs, whatever it took, and it was quite intense, but they could do it. But by the time the anthropologists came to live among these people, they'd already had some contact with the 20th century and were not quite as primitive and isolated as they had been. And they no longer telepathically communicated with their related settlements. And the anthropologists were really bummed about that because they really wanted to see it in action. And they asked, why don't you do this anymore? And the tribal leader said something along these lines. That ritual, those trances, that ability takes a tremendous amount of energy and effort and dedication and commitment. It's a lot to do. And why should we do all that? We can now just pick up the phone. And I went, oh, bingo. Yeah. I chose the cataract surgery and I'm fine with it, thank you. Okay? But still, I know, I feel that there is out there still a little bit of perhaps some doubt and resistance to anything less than a full-out act of faith to heal something. I mean, if you're so smart, why ain't you rich? You remember that?
Mm-hmm.
We can put that into new thought and go, if you're so spiritual, why ain't you healed? But remember what I said about how being human is a very complex and often contradictory thing. It's a way of living. You know, that we are often incredibly contradictory beings. And it's true. I used to worry about that. I thought it was kind of nuts. But Walt Whitman wrote something that really helped me to understand. Walt Whitman wrote, do I contradict myself? Very well. I contradict myself. I contain multitudes. And you know, I liked that because it speaks to the many levels at which we humans operate at all time. We are not robots who can only operate according to a finite set of variables given to us. Our lives are imbued with infinite possibility. Infinite possibilities. So there's nothing black and white, easy, predictable. There's a lot going on in here. Body, mind, and spirit. And I think that the Creator, the Supreme Being, the Oversoul, whatever you want to call it, gives rise to all that is, not just all that makes orderly sense, right? The creation of planets and galaxies is a very messy and violent business. Right? You know, the billions of galaxies out there, no two are alike, just as no snowflakes are alike. So while the Creator is perfect order, it seems the Creator has no problem with differences, eccentricities, uniqueness. In fact, when I look at creation, when I look at the world, I see diversity everywhere, and it's beautiful. It's beautiful. I think, when I think about the beloved Oversoul God, whatever I call it, I can't imagine that something that wonderful and powerful would create stuff that's boring. So, yeah. To get to the point then, I mean, each of us is unique. Each of us has a specific soul journey that is ours alone. Nobody can walk my path. You can walk with me for a while, but you're not having the same experience, right? So what may look like healing to some may strike others as simply avoiding a human experience that's necessary for our continued expansion as divine beings. And this is the difference where we talk about the difference between healing and curing. Okay? When we speak about curing something, we are speaking a medical language, and I looked it up. And in the definition it says this: inherent in the idea of a cure is the permanent end to a specific instance of disease. Finite, clean-cut, orderly, singular. But when we are talking about healing, in our spiritual community, I would say that we are talking about our ability to integrate and reintegrate all the aspects of our inner selves to re-emerge into the state of wholeness in which we were created originally. What do I mean by wholeness? I mean being aware of, embracing, imbued with, grateful for my oneness, my sense of oneness with the Creator Spirit from whom I emerged. Healing is not about the absence of anything or the dysfunction of any part of who we are, really. I can lose a leg, and I can still be my innate, whole, and perfect self as I sit in meditation and prayer and contemplation and remember that. This beautiful earth suit that we have is not me. Okay? So in the Science of Mind magazine back in 1994, Dr. Ventura Papke, who was Ernest Holmes's practitioner, wrote this: we each have certain things we need to overcome in our life in order to reveal the truth of who we are. And there is good in every circumstance and situation because God is in everything. The difficulties I've experienced in my life have led me to understand that God doesn't punish or give or take. I think that's one of the hardest things for people to grasp. We're taught to pray and that God will give us whatever we are asking for. But it isn't that God gives it to us. It's that we change our mind. We open our thinking and we open ourselves to the good that is always there. Curing versus healing. Have you ever known someone who was cured of a medical condition but who remained the same snide, unpleasant, whiny, nasty person they always were? Yeah, they may have been cured, but I can't say they were healed. On the other hand, I give you Christopher Reeve, the incredibly handsome man who played Superman before he was thrown from his horse and was paralyzed from the shoulders down. Christopher Reeve was in a wheelchair and on a ventilator for the rest of his life. But from that wheelchair, the symbol of his brokenness, he lobbied for spinal injury research, including, and this is way back when, this was very, very daring, human embryonic stem cell research, for better insurance for people with disability. And he created an entire research center, the Reeve Irvine Research Center, and a foundation to give people in need with disabilities the support that they need. I mean, Christopher Reeve was never cured. But I would say that he was indeed healed. He came into his wholeness as a result of what we see as brokenness. He did an awful lot of good, and he became a compassionate spokesperson. He did things that he may not have even ever considered had he stayed at the top of his game as an actor. So in effect, to me, healing is an ongoing process that is basic, natural, and spirit-driven. It's going on all the time in us, regardless of illnesses or accidents or trauma. And how can that be, right? Because the process of healing is simply the ongoing process of creation that is God being God in and as each of us every nanosecond. I know that we talk about in science the Big Bang when creation began. And then there it is. But creation is not an event. It is an ongoing, living process that imbues itself into and infuses itself into everything that is created. Creator spirit is perfect and whole. Nothing left out. Nothing missing. Nothing not operating at peak performance. As expressions of God, we share in that nature, right? Which means that we are meant to be whole. And as we open to that flow of the healing presence of God, God doesn't heal. Everything heals around God because God just is perfect. It's showering us all the time. Every nanosecond, as I said. We swim in that ocean of perfect being. And speaking of healing is basic and natural, the body actually heals itself, you know. All of our wonderful medical technology and our pharmacology, they're great. And they are bit players supporting the starring role, which is the body itself, the body temple. As it goes about its little miraculous and normal knitting together of broken bones, right? Flushing out of toxic substances, eliminating foreign bodies. I mean, you get the idea. We ourselves are the ultimate nature of healing. Look at how the body does it. Okay. We are eternally whole, basically perfect and complete as emanations of God, and that is regardless of COVID, arthritis, cancer, heart failure, you name it. Those are human experiences. But somehow, here's kind of a new point. I think for us to end up with this superpower of this healing, and I think this is related to our superpower of free will. My experience has been that in some way I have to give permission to myself, to my body, to my mind, to align with that which is healing, okay? It means being receptive, open to what is already there. We use affirmative prayer. We use meditation. We use affirmations. Mm-hmm. In other words, this is a way of giving permission to say yes. And there's one of the Jesus's miracle healings, I think, brings this out very, very clearly. Just very quickly. Jesus and the disciples were in Jerusalem, and they had gone to this. Was that me? Okay. All right. To this particular pool that was that all the infirm went to, because apparently an angel went down at a certain season into the pool and troubled the waters. And whosoever then first got into the water after the angel troubled it would immediately be made whole and healed of anything that was bothering them. So Jesus is there, and he sees this man who had been lying by that pool for 38 years.
Wow.
And when Jesus saw him, and he knew they'd been there a long time, Jesus said to the man, "Wilt thou be made whole?" Before he said, take up thy bed and walk. And the man took up his bed and he walked. But I think it's significant that first the man had to say yes to who he was, to that emanation of the divine. Wilt thou be made whole? Do you know your true nature? Now, before I forget, I do want to acknowledge that affirmative prayer and faith often manifests as curing and healing. Seemingly fatal diseases go into remission or disappear altogether, right? People emerge from comas and stun physicians, with their complete cognitive and physical recovery. This happened with my own daughter when she was 4 months old. The doctors told me after 2 weeks of her being in a coma that if she came to, she would have severe brain damage. Ha, ha, ha. Little did they know, no way, Jose. She woke up and she was perfect. And they couldn't explain it. So, yeah, people can and do take up their beds and walk. Affirmative prayer works. Knock and the door is opened, ask and it shall be given. And when affirmative prayer and great faith do not yield a cure, perhaps instead of blaming an inadequate faith, we might look to see how the individual is experiencing the condition, who is experiencing that condition, is manifesting wholeness in other ways, such as Christopher Reeve did. Remember what Vittorio Papke said, we each have certain things we need to overcome in our life in order to reveal the truth of who we are. I mean, I like being cured of ailments, no doubt about it. But even more, I like feeling my wholeness with all that is. I know, and when I feel that I can remain open to that presence that heals simply by being, then curing can happen or not happen. But the greater truth is interesting, because curing is a wonderful physical ability, and it's a one-time thing for something specific. Remember that medical thinking? What is it? A permanent end to a specific instance of disease, okay? Finite, temporal, extremely limited. But my healing is unlimited and eternal and infinite in its possibilities for my growth. And that's very cool. And so it is. So let's, in this moment, then go within to just touch that place that is the deep, vast, perfect peace, perfect wholeness that is the God Self, the Christ consciousness, the Atman, the Buddha. It is us, the truth of who we are, eternal, vast beyond our imagining. And as I sink into this and remember my birth, my origins, my essence, what I accept and know is that this truth for me is true for all beings. And that as I accept and know in my consciousness, because I am one with the only consciousness that is, it is known throughout the universe and beyond. And so in this moment I claim and accept with gratitude and joy the perfect healing for each person according to their soul's journey. I claim for us the willingness to stand in faith and to see the truth of the beautiful complexity of our lives as we touch heaven and stand on earth. I'm grateful to know for each of us there is support, recognition, help, encouragement, love, caring, all that is needed for the curing and the healing of body, mind, and spirit. It's always there. And so I relax. There's nothing to strive for. There's nothing to crave. It has been given since before I drew breath. And in that recognition, I'm grateful. Because as I know this to be true, then I move into this world, leaving this place better, bigger, kinder, and more loving. May it be so for all. May it be always so. And so it is.